Good morning, children. Today we are going to study about what is an acid. Now you have heard about three categories of compounds. One is acid, one is base, and one is salt. First we will discuss about what is acid. In today's class we will just discuss what is acid. So the definition of acid is a compound which when dissolved in water gives H plus ions as the only positive ions. H plus, or you can also say H3O plus ions as the only positive ions along with an electronegative radical. So what is an acid? Acid is a compound which when dissolved in water. What do? You take an acid, you dissolve it in water, and what does it give? It gives H plus ions or H3O plus ions as the only positive ions along with an electronegative radical. Now let us take an example of acid. First we take sulfuric acid, H2SO4. When you dissolve in water, this H2SO4, it has two parts. One is the positive part, that is hydrogen, and second is the sulfate radical. So when you dissolve it in water, it breaks up into hydrogen ions along with an electronegative radical. Suppose you take another acid. You take the acid, HCl. Now in HCl, you have one atom of hydrogen and one atom of chlorine. So one atom of hydrogen and one atom of chlorine, it breaks up to give one hydrogen ion plus one chlorine ion. So hydrogen one ion, chlorine one ion. So this is the definition of an acid. What is an acid? Acid is a compound which when dissolved in water, when you dissolve it in water, it breaks up. It breaks up to give H plus ions. The positive ions will always be H plus and there will be a electronegative radical. Now in the definition, it was given H plus ion or H3O plus ion. What is H3O plus ion? Now this H plus ion, it will combine with the water molecule H2O to give two hydrogen atom plus one hydrogen atom, H3O, and this plus charge is there. So H3O plus. This is called hydronium ion. What is it called? Hydronium ion. So once again, what is an acid? Acid is a compound which when dissolved in water gives H plus ions as the only positive ions. There will be no other positive ion other than the H plus ion along with an electronegative radical. This electronegative radical, here it goes sulfate, here it is chloride, it can be nitrate, it can be sulfite, it can be carbonate. All these are electronegative radicals which can be there in the acid. But in the positive phase, you will only have H plus ion, or this H plus combines with water to form hydronium ion. H plus means H plus and water, it combines to form hydronium ion. Once again, what is an acid? An acid is a compound which when dissolved in water, you dissolve it in water. Water is also called, when you dissolve it, it's called an aqueous solution. So acid is a compound which when dissolved in water gives H plus ions, furnishes H plus ions as the only positive ions along with the electronegative radical. Now, acid can be divided into three categories on the basis of the strength. You can have two categories. One is strong acid and one is weak acid. So acid can be divided into strong acid, one, and second is weak acid. So there are two kinds of acid, strong acid and weak acid. So what is a strong acid? Strong acid, suppose you take sulfuric acid and you dissolve in water. If you take 100 molecules, almost 97 to 98 molecules will break down to give H plus ions. So when there is a high percentage of the molecules breaking into ions to give H plus ions, it's called a strong acid. So what is a strong acid? Strong acid can be defined as an acid which ionizes to a large extent. It breaks into ions to a large extent. That is, out of 100 molecules, you will have maybe 95, 96 molecules ionizing. And a weak acid is an acid which ionizes to a small extent. For example, strong acid example is HCl. You have HNO3. You have H2SO4. All these are examples of strong acid. What does the strong acid do? When you dissolve in water, it ionizes to a large extent. What does a weak acid do? Weak acid, we have examples like H2CO3. H2CO3, you have formic acid. H2SO3, formic acid, all these are called weak acids. Why are they called weak acids? When you dissolve it in water, it ionizes to a small extent. Now, where do you find carbonic acid? You drink Pepsi, other cool drinks are there where carbon dioxide is dissolved under pressure. So the CO2, it combines with H2O, CO2 combines with H2O to give H2CO3. Water plus carbon dioxide combines to form carbonic acid. So carbonic acid is a weak acid. What is a weak acid? Which ionizes to a small extent. That means out of 100 molecules, very few molecules ionize. And what is a strong acid? Strong acid is an acid which ionizes to a great extent. For example, out of 100 molecules, maybe 90 to 95 molecules will ionize. So that's a strong acid. So that is a division of acid on the basis of strength. So based on the strength of an acid, you can divide acid into strong acid and weak acid. Now second, you have another classification for dividing acid. The second basis for division is mono, 2, di, 3, tri, mono, di, tri, basic acid. Now you have three other kinds of category: mono basic, di basic, tri basic. Mono means 1, di means 2, tri means 3. Now what is a mono basic acid? To take an example of HCl. When it ionizes in water, what does it do? It gives one H plus ion and one chloride radical. So how many H plus ions are there? You get one H plus ion. So it is mono basic acid. Now the reaction will be like this: HCl, you dissolve it in water, H2O, it will give this H plus plus Cl minus. So this H plus combines with H2O to give H3O plus Cl minus. So this is called hydronium ion. So when an acid, and one molecule of an acid gives one hydronium ion or one H plus ion, it's called a mono basic acid. Once again, mono, the meaning of mono is one. So mono basic acid is an acid which when dissolved in water is H plus one H plus ion per molecule, or one hydronium ion per molecule. What is a dibasic acid? Let us take an example of dibasic acid. Dibasic example is H2SO4. Now in H2SO4 there are two atoms of hydrogen, one atom of sulfur and four atoms of oxygen. When you dissolve it in water plus H2O, it ionizes. So what does it ionize and give? This ionization takes place, and how many molecules, how many ions of H are given? Two atoms are there, so two ions will come. So this two combines with two water molecules to give 2H3O plus. Two atoms combine with two water molecules to give 2H3O plus molecule and plus SO4 minus 2. Since there are two positive ions given, here you will have SO4 minus 2. So this is a dibasic acid. So what is a dibasic acid? Dibasic acid is an acid in which one molecule of the acid gives two hydronium ions. When one molecule of an acid gives two hydronium ions, it's called a dibasic acid. Third, you have tribasic acid. So mono, now you have dibasic. And now last is tribasic. Let us take the example of tribasic. You have H3PO4. You have the acid H3PO4. When it ionizes, there are three hydrogen atoms, so it will be 3H plus ions plus PO4 minus 3. So since there are three hydrogen atoms, it ionizes to give 3 hydronium ions, I3H plus ion. So in water, how will it be? H3PO4. There are 3 atoms here of hydrogen, so plus 3 molecules of water gives 3 hydronium ions, 3H3O plus PO4 minus 3. So PO4 minus 3. So here, one molecule of the acid gives 3 hydronium ions. So it's called a tribasic acid. So we had done 2 classifications of acid. First we discussed what is an acid. We discussed that acid is a compound which when dissolved in water gives H plus ions as the only positive ions along with an electronegative radical. The electronegative radical can be anything. It can be chlorine, it can be phosphate, it can be carbonate, it can be nitrate. But the positive part will be hydrogen ions or hydronium ions. So what is an acid? An acid is a compound which when dissolved in water gives H plus ions as the only positive ions along with an electronegative radical. Acid can be on the basis of strength. Acid can be classified into strong acid and weak acid. So that was what we did first. Strong acid is an acid which ionizes to a large extent. What do you mean by ionizes to a large extent? That means out of every 100 molecules, more than 90 molecules will ionize. So there is a strong ionization there. And a weak acid is an acid which ionizes to a small extent, like the cool drink and Pepsi and when you drink, you have carbonic acid in it. Carbon dioxide dissolved under pressure. Formic acid, when a bee stings you, it injects formic acid into you. All these are weak acid which ionizes to a small extent. Out of 100 molecules, maybe 20, 30, 40 molecules may ionize. Then on the basis of basicity, it can be divided into monobasic acid, dibasic acid, tribasic. The name itself indicates mono means 1, di means 2 and tri means 3. Monobasic acid, an acid in which 1 hydronium ion is given per molecule is called monobasic acid. Dibasic acid, an acid in which 2 hydronium ions are given per molecule is called dibasic acid. Tribasic acid, an acid in which 3 hydronium ions are given per molecule is called tribasic acid. Thank you all of you. God bless you. We'll continue with the classes.